So I am removing the fat. This is the stock that we made yesterday, and the fat, obviously being fat, floats on the surface, so it's very easy to remove. It's actually much easier like this than it is when it's still in a very liquid form, because then it's sort of you have to, I don't know, chase it around and stuff like that. Whereas here, because it's sort of solidified-ish, you can just see it how very clearly, and once it's gone, it's gone. It's quite nice. Saturated fat, that is the stuff that kills you. Well, I mean, it doesn't kill you, but over time, if you have too much of it, then it hangs around in your bloodstream and clogs your arteries and stuff like that. But you can still use it for cooking roasties and stuff like that, but that's not what we're doing today. There's also stuff at the bottom of this, these sort of little remnants of meat and bones and stuff, so I'm going to put this through a sieve to get rid of that stuff. Because you want a nice, clear, clean broth. I don't really have a pot, I think, big enough to take this whole lot, so I'm just probably going to have to put it into a few different containers, maybe, or maybe not. Actually, I think it's going to fit. Ooh, it fit. It fitted. And that's all the above mentioned crap that I wanted to get rid of. Various. Look how thick that is. You can see it's kind of. I was saying yesterday I was going to be able to cut it with a knife, but that's if it was refrigerated, you know. It's out in the room temperature like this, which it has been overnight, then it won't. But that is now officially the stock, and it only took 24 hours. So I am now ready to start trimming this. This is one of a few pieces. Remember, I cut it into smaller pieces yesterday. And for that purpose, I have my massive knife, which is huge. I don't know if I can impress upon you somehow the scale of this knife. There's my hand. Anyway, I always use this knife for cutting up massive pieces of beef when I make Boeuf bourguignon, because it's very good at keeping an edge while you're working, and it's a big piece of meat and it's a big knife. But I think to begin with, to do some of this trimming, I'm just going to use a normal sized knife right here, and we will see how we go. This is always a bit of a kind of creative process, because some things you definitely want to get rid of and some things you're not sure. Like this, for example, is a very thick kind of membrane here. I don't want that, but I don't want to cut too much into the beef underneath, but there's like nothing in between the beef and that thing, so it gets a little bit weird sometimes. But best place to start is just to start, you know, and separate these things from each other, because something like this, for example, you would actually not want to get rid of, because over the course of cooking for 4 hours, that softens up, and you get this nice sort of gelatinous kind of layer into a piece of meat that is quite nice to eat. But you don't want too much of it, on the other hand, because then it's just like, you know, you're just eating gelatinous things. So this is probably going to be a lot of, like, there's not that much meat in this, but there is some. This is obviously just an enormous piece of fat, saturated cow fat, killer fat, arterial sclerosis fat. Any very sort of serious looking kind of tendons and ligaments, whatever, are out, and any kind of major chunks of hard fat have been taken out. I'm gonna remove this thing here. It's fine over here, it's quite thin, right? But over here you see it's thicker, and that's gonna be kind of that could just stay tough or just be this kind of weird looking thing, so I don't really want any weird looking things. So I'm just gonna sort of clumsily get rid of it. Just the thick part of it, because I'm not that obsessed. It's very slippery. It's a problem. I should probably have one of those gloves, you know, made of chainmail or something. Okay, this looks like a very perfect looking piece of meat. I wonder what muscle that is. I'm just gonna, okay. So we bring out the big knife, and I'm going to cut, I think, this way first. See how that goes through? That's just amazing for me, this knife. It's like an old steel, like non-stainless steel, as you can see, like rustable steel. And it just has such a better cutting edge than anything I have in stainless. So this now, nice, maybe, it's kind of like you sort of see where the big, the shape of the overall piece of meat, sort of gauge it and then figure out how can I make some neat looking pieces out of this. And I think in this case I'm going to take a couple off the end, because that is probably about the right size for one piece. That's like about the size of an egg. That's a biggish piece, and now I might split it in half. Oops. See that? It's got to come out. That thing is too big. So there's another one. Yeah, this is going to be tricky. I think I might have to split this, because I think the only way I can dissect that out is going to be by making this two slightly smaller pieces. That's a bit too small, but a piece of tendon or whatever it is like this is just going to be indigestible, no matter how long you cook it for. Should maybe be using my smaller knife for this, but what the hell. There we go. See, that can still go. Oh, it's a little bit messy. And that's two pieces there. And so this goes on and on and on until, and I've got my little scales here, which I bought recently, half price from Amazon. And I'm going to weigh it so that I know exactly how much meat that I'm putting in there, because I do want to have about half a pound per person, and I'm cooking for 30 people. So, by the way, anyone wondering how somebody who complains about not having enough money to pay his heating bill can afford to buy a piece of meat that cost 70 pounds. The reason I can afford it is because I've been saving up for it since last Christmas. Every Friday I put £5 into my Christmas Monzo pot, and a year later there's like 200 and whatever pounds in there. So that's the only way that I can afford to do stuff like this, because I have very limited income because of my mental health problems. I don't work, and I have to be extremely frugal with money. Even though that's cutting beautifully, it's already sort of needs a little bit of a freshen up. Now look at the size of this sharpening steel, which I bought in a charity shop for £1. That's all I need. Look at how beautiful that is. It's going to be really nice. Geez, it's such a brilliant knife. It's like, it feels like it could just cut your arm off. The reason I have it, it's actually a friend of mine in Canada, when I was growing up, gave me this knife, and he had it on his farm for, well, I mean, he was my age, but it had been on their farm for about 100 years or something like this, or maybe not, and it came from Finland originally, and they used it for cutting rabbits' heads off and all sorts of things like that. So it's a good knife. It's lasted for a long time. I say maybe not 100 years. I have no idea, but at least several decades. I've had it for 30 years. And it was old when I got it, so... Anyway, I'm going to get some more meat. I just got a fright when I took this out of the fridge because I saw these little ice crystals on there. And I thought, oh my god, if this thing is frozen overnight, I'm in trouble. But it is not. And now this is just the most massive piece of meat ever. So to make things easier, I'm just going to cut it straight in half so that I can just, like, you know, handle it to start trimming it and stuff like that. But jeez, wow, you could not do that with an ordinary knife. I just love that knife. Okay, this can just sit in there and wait. And this I'm going to start trimming. Ooh, look at that. Somebody who likes fat would like that. I don't know if there's anything I can do with something like that. Beef fat. You know, some slow assisted suicide maybe. That would probably be the... So the thing is, I don't want to cut into the meat. I want to stay away from the meat as much as possible. But, you know, this being a sort of a living creature at one point, all of these shapes and things in here are determined by function. So you can often get like very sort of tricky little corners that you have trouble cutting your way through without destroying the piece of meat, simply because the meat and the fat are so intertwined. But this big massive piece here, I think we can safely say goodbye to. Oops, no, there I'm doing exactly what I said I didn't want to do. I'm cutting into the meat instead of keeping the knife right next to the fat. So there will probably be a pile of semi-acceptable pieces of meat out of this, which I can maybe put through the food processor and make mince or something like that. Could have a hamburger for dinner. Yeah, this is just one of those corners where it's like, what the hell? So that's not too bad. I mean, that's not a lot of loss there, but I can probably just take that off and put that to one side for a little kind of hamburger bowl. I don't have a bowl for that. I'll just put it there. That's really nice. See how this, you know, there's nothing wrong with that piece of meat. It's just that it's not big enough to put in a boeuf bourguignon because it'll just sort of disappear. But I don't like waste. I like to get as much out of something as possible. Not just because it's money, but because it's also the principle, you know, like this is, I don't know, I just don't like waste. I don't see the point of it if you can avoid it. Here I am cutting towards myself. I'll disembowel myself any second now. There we go. Right, that is going in there. And this, I'm going to cut like that. I'll concentrate on this smaller piece, like this. I haven't really figured out the perfect way to sharpen a knife. I've seen people do it like this, I've seen people do it like that, I've seen people do it all sorts of ways of doing it. I find that I'm not actually that good at sharpening knives in any other way than the one that I do, which is towards me like this, like that. And that's actually how I got that from watching a Julia Child video. That's how she did it, and I think since that's how I started doing it, then maybe that's just how it has remained, because I'm an old dog and I don't want to learn new tricks. I don't know if I'm actually old. I'm going to be 52 this month, which I'm kind of actually only thought about for the first time this morning. And I thought, well, the next big one is 60, and then that's like, you know, Grim Reaper territory. Sorry to any 60-year-olds who find that remark offensive, but, you know, keep on with my life, pay my bills, as they say. I just think that I'm beginning to feel like my last chapter needs to be sort of looked at, because Well, last chapter. Okay, 60. Hopefully I will not die when I'm in my 60s. But, you know, part of the thing with doing this project of improving my physical and mental health is that I want to have some quality of life for some time. And the way that I'm living right now, carrying all this extra weight, he said, cutting into 100 kilos of beef fat, is just not gonna, I mean, I weigh 300 pounds. I'm gonna be dead by the time I'm 60 if I just don't do anything about it. And I don't like being fat. I didn't used to really be fat, but I got depressed during the pandemic, and I didn't care about myself at all. I didn't care what I looked like. I didn't care what I was doing. I didn't care how my life was going. And the consequence of that was that I gained a shit ton of weight because I didn't care. So, and you know what's interesting? Sorry if I'm rambling here, but I, never having been particularly fat. I mean, I was heavy at one point, but not like this. I'm surprised at how much abuse I get for being fat. Like, I will be walking down the street, and this is something I never would have expected. I'll walk down the street, and then somebody just walking towards me on the street, we're not talking or exchanging eye contact or anything, would just say, "Fat boy." Or that happened a couple times. Or I remember this one woman, I was on the canal, and she wanted to get past me, and I was on my bike taking a picture of something, and she just stood there waiting for me to move out of her way. And I said, "Can I help you?" And she said, "Well, we're supposed to stay 2 meters apart, and you're very fat, and I can't get by you." So next time that you hear somebody saying, they get treated unfairly or discriminated against, you might not know the whole picture. So I feel sorry for people who've been fat their whole lives, because they've been receiving that kind of abuse, I'm sure, their whole lives. I've only been receiving it for about a year, and I intend to lose weight anyway, so I probably will not. Hopefully, fingers crossed, if I still have fingers at the end of this particular operation. Hopefully, I will not have to experience fat abuse. Okay, there it is, next to my hand. That is a huge pile of meat. That's a big bowl as well, probably about 25 centimeters across. Anyway, I'm going to weigh it out of curiosity to see how much there is of this, proper lean meat. There's bits in here that have some of these things in them, but that's all fine, because over the long cooking time of 4 hours, that stuff these little sinews and things, they break down they break down into this lovely kind of gooey stuff, which is very flavorful and gives the whole thing a nice texture.